This is part 3 of a series. Watch part 2 if you haven't already. Before we get into talking about buffing towers, I want to just do one more quick thing about Comanche. And I just want to say that when I say the Comanche is balanced, I'm talking about how the game is currently it's balanced in, rather than how the game should be. So if you believe the Comanche should be nerfed and Super Ceramic should also be nerfed, then you are in agreement with me in saying that the Comanche actually is balanced right now, because it's the only way to actually beat the challenges that this game has to offer. Every single other method is inadequate, except permaspike, I guess. And I'm hoping, yeah, sure, Comanche could be nerfed. You could but you would also have to take down permaspike and super ceramics with it. Otherwise, this game's just going to be much more stale than it was before, and hashed out chimps will no longer be possible, and high finance chimps will no longer be possible, which I think are pretty upsetting things, to be honest. I would hope for a little bit more game diversity than that. But the whole super ceramics being nerfed thing is not just a quick fix to all the problems. You will need to do just as much work with the nerfing of the super ceramics, because if you nerf the super ceramics, then maybe you could have Archmage be the tower to balance all 5th-tier towers around rather than Comanche. And surprise, surprise, all the rest of the 5th-tier towers are still worse than Archmage. Like, Archmage is decent enough, but every single other DPS tower and every single other 5th-tier tower just doesn't compare to it. You still need to buff all these other 5th-tier towers, and then you also need to nerf some non-5th-tier towers like Recursive Cluster, Wall of Fire, Sun Avatar, probably 401 Wizard. Maybe not. That one's kind of cool. I think that one's kind of on the down low at this point. Basically, you would need to still balance change a lot of things, even with nerfing Super Ceramic. So I'm not gonna say that's an end-all just for balance. And I'm not gonna say that just because Comanche is the only way to beat the game, that it's stupid overpowered because of it. One more thing I want to say about the Comanche is just because it beats 96-97% of the rounds doesn't actually make it overpowered. Now, in most cases, I would actually say that's stupid. I'm pretty sure a lot of you guys are saying that's stupid. However, you have to consider the fact that this game only has 4 difficult rounds. All the other rounds are actual cakewalks. Like, the only difficult rounds are 95, 98, 99, and 100. You don't die on the other rounds. Like, if you go on the forums, if you go in YouTube comments looking for people asking for help, it is always on one of those 4 rounds. No one ever goes, hey guys, the round 97 fortified ZLMGs are just way too hard for me. I need some help. No one has ever done that. No one does that, like, at all. And just because Comanche can solo round 97, round 86, that sort of thing, isn't actually that big of an achievement. It's more of a testament to the crappiness of the other towers that can't even get past the easy rounds, much less the actual hard rounds, because 95, 98, 99, 100 are just leagues above the rest of the rounds as in difficulty. You know, unless you're considering rounds like, you know, 63, 75, 79, 87, that sort of thing. But I'm talking about like late game 90s rounds, that sort of thing. Those are the big choke points, all things considered. Oh, and don't get me started about how even if the other 5th-tier towers would be buffed up to Comanche, suddenly the beginners maps and intermediate maps will become like a total joke, as if they aren't already. I'm pretty sure that even without Comanche, you can beat every single beginner map on chimps with $100,000 left over. Even if you use some non-Comanche strategy, even if you just do like, you know, random ass low-tier tower spam, that's 3.5 times the amount of starting cash in deflation mode. So yeah, I don't really see how buffing the other towers will suddenly make the easy maps easy, because they already are easy. I'm really confused as to how that's supposed to work. Like, every single game mode that isn't an advanced or expert map chimps is honestly a joke. If people want to nerf the Super Ceramics and also nerf Comanche permaspike along with it, I mean, that's totally fine too. Just keep in mind, we are going to need some buffs, and that's my transition next part of the video. The towers that should be buffed, even if you fucking nerf Super Ceramics. So here we go. First on the list, we have the Inferno Ring, which is a not bad group balloon pop and power tower that was buffed a few times so it could deal with Super Ceramics. However, unfortunately, it still struggles against fortified Super Ceramics. And you have to consider that on any advanced maps or harder, this thing's not going to be that useful because there really aren't that many good bends. The only better bend than the one that it's currently on right now is probably somewhere in Cornfield. So realistically, trying to get value out of this guy is not going to work out, especially with how much it costs. And even though it's buffed by Alchemist, buffed by Village, and getting some help from our boy the First Strike sub, which will help counter its weaknesses, which are of course high tier Moab class balloons, it still seems to be struggling and leaking quite a bit against just mid-tier 80s rounds, which is a little concerning to say the least. If the super ceramics are nerfed, this thing will certainly become a lot better, but its strengths won't particularly grow that much because it's not the best against Moabs. Sometimes it'll do like pretty decent damage against early Moabs, but it still needs to have all the time of the world to hit them, and it needs for the Moabs to not be fortified Moabs, and dealing with just Moabs and below isn't generally good enough, and it does have a pop limit, so if those Moabs happen to actually be children of largely comped balloons, it's not going to deal with all the Moabs and all the ceramics inside. It's just going to eventually become overwhelming, and obviously fortification as a whole shits on this. All in all, it's still like not terrible as cleanup, but you have to consider that spending this sort of money on a tower that only deals with Moabs and below is generally a bit of a waste, so I would just recommend taking the price down a bit, maybe to 45,000, maybe 40,000, because really you do want to be spending the majority of your defense on DDT's defense, on high-level Moab defense, of course the BAD defense. If you're spending this much money on just something that deals with Moabs and below, you are going to lose. So next up we have the Bomb Blitz, which is a bit of a meme. I kind of like the Leak Lives Do Things mechanic. Of course, obviously it's not going to be used in Chimps mode, so I'm not going to really take that into account, and of course Impossible mode is basically the same unless you gain lives, but even when you can get this thing to work, it's not that great. It's $50,000 for a weaker SAR bomb. It does 2,000 damage to all things on map as opposed to the 3,000 that SAR bomb does, and it has the exact same cooldown. You actually cannot do the Bomb Blitz right after you've done a Bomb Blitz, so you can see lives leaking and nothing happening. You gotta wait a full 45 seconds for the Bomb Blitz to come back, which is a little unfortunate, and just dealing the 2,000 damage is not that spectacular whatsoever, especially when you have no control over when you do it, and especially since you don't get a stun. What I would probably do to fix this is obviously fix it with Azili, because Azili is the whole reason that I like the lives leaking mechanic. You can use Azili to force you to lose life. Currently, Bomb Blitz does not activate if you force yourself to lose a life with Azili, which is a bug, so obviously fix that. And then I would price buff it, just maybe 8,000 or so, bring it down to 30,000, because basically all you're paying for is the consistent cluster bombage, and maybe even 30,000 is still too high. 25,000? I don't know. But if you really want to make the main tower work, you could have the just main attack do more damage against super ceramics, and I think that would cover it. Next up, we have the Absolute Zero, which is basically a glorified sabotage supply lines. It's also pretty good against anything that isn't Moab. It will pretty much permanently freeze any balloon it gets a hold on, from ceramic down to nothing, even super ceramics, as long as that mate takes. However, it actually doesn't pop white and zebra balloons, which is a pretty big disappointment for the tower that costs that much and still just randomly leak to whites and zebras, forcing you to get an MIB is kind of sad, to say the least. But something else I want to mention is that his ability really isn't that great. Like I said, it's a glorified sabotage supply lines. It does seem to slow the balloons to even slower than Sabo. Like, the slow is actually like pretty significant, but it costs a lot. Like, the slow better be fucking good, right? So it's also taken into account that it lasts for less time than Sabo, so I think that should be made up with it slowing more layers. It seems that if you slow a ZOMG pop into VFBs, the VFBs are going to be back full speed, and having it be like Ice from BTD Battles, where it slows 2 layers instead of 1, I think could be a lot more balanced and less ridiculous. Also, just giving it innate white and zebra pop and power would probably be reasonable. Now, obviously, that would probably mean it would beat any non-Moab class balloons, but for 35,000, you better fucking hope it does. Like, you can't just be spending $35,000 on something that's only partially going to deal with ceramics and below. Next up is a tower that's actually better than I expected, Glue Storm. So I've used some weird tiers of glue before in chimps runs where I just really needed to do super ceramics and my towers just weren't popping up fast enough, or the super ceramics are too fast and I needed to stop them, and having some really strong glue on a glue hose was a really good way to deal with it, giving my towers a lot more time to deal with the ceramics. So the glue storm is like that, except it actually glues the balloons for longer, and it doesn't really have a pop limit or a hit limit, and it seems to slow them down even more, and the ability lasts for 15 seconds. So that's like almost good, except for the fact that 75% of the time it's really not doing too much. Then when it goes back, whenever it goes back to normal glue hose, it kind of just becomes useless again. So I think the biggest thing I would suggest is increasing the ability duration, and just kind of a little pet peeve is to glue the ceramics faster. Sometimes ceramics will go unglued for a whole second, maybe even longer. I can't tell because it's fast forwarded, and I'm hoping there can just be more ticks on the tower to scan the maps for ceramic balloons a little quicker, just to make sure we don't accidentally have one run through and die just to the tick being at the wrong time. I don't think that would be very fun. But yeah, this guy's actually almost on the verge of being pretty good. Like, it's cheap, so it's not going to solo all the non-Moab class balloons, but it is going to make it so your recursive clusters that you used earlier are going to actually stand a better chance against these non-Moab class balloons. And how long exactly should the ability last? So I believe it lasts 15 seconds out of, if I had to guess, 45 seconds to a minute. I would say up that to 20 or 25 seconds, or whatever half of its cooldown is. I would say having it active for half the time is reasonably fair, or just reducing the cooldown instead. Having it last for 15 seconds, but having the cooldown take 30 seconds, for example. It could be a lot better. Next up, we have the super glue, which is one of the only ways to permanently fully stun multiple blimps. Actually, it might be the only way, unless you take into account like Superstorm. But this guy is like almost good. It's just, the thing is, if you want him to actually be useful, you would want to have multiple of them, so you can stun more than 6 blimps per shot, but it's impossible to have more than one 5th tier tower, so it's just not really that great. And because you're spending so much money on him, you can't actually spend too much money on the rest of the towers, kind of screwing you up, making it so you're just not going to have the DPS you want, because this guy's only going to stun a few of the balloons at a time, and the 90 plus rounds, there's just so many blimps that come in, except for a select few rounds, that this guy's just not going to catch them all, and your towers are generally going to be overwhelmed. So how would I change this guy? Probably just give him a price buff so you can just afford other towers to back him up. Not make it so you have to solely rely and then die because of this guy. Giving yourself a little bit more cash would probably be helpful. Next up, we have the Elite Sniper, the middle path 5th tier sniper, which is just really weak. Granted, the majority of the reason for that is because snipers suck against super ceramics, as we all know. Like, a lot of towers really suck against super ceramics, but these super suck. It is really unfortunate. But honestly, this thing is a waste of money even without the super ceramic OPness. It's pretty expensive to get it by itself, and if you want it to be good, you actually need to have a lot of extra snipers for the buff. Obviously, I mean, the cash drop is good. It's not good, it's whatever outside of chimps mode, and I shouldn't really just consider this for chimps mode, but even for impoppable mode, the cash drop probably isn't worth it, just considering you're gonna need a lot more snipers, and snipers as a whole are just pretty weak towers, all things considered. You can pull them off on beginner maps, and the only useful sniper is just having a lone main Moab. Like, that's for specialty is just good, but using them for raw pom power, not good. So the thing I would probably change is giving this guy more of an attack speed buff to all the snipers, and or reducing the price of it. And something I'd probably do sniper wide is just give them more attack damage versus super ceramics. It'd only be fair since they're supposed to be layer towers. Just have them do more damage to super ceramics and nothing else, and I think that's pretty fair. So now that we've gone through a couple of these exceptionally bad tier 5 towers, I kind of want to explain what exactly the whole purpose of this is, because I don't think a lot of people are actually getting the point. So I don't want to just take these towers and put them in a spot where you can just use them on like any map, any mode, because you can already do that. You can already use any one of these towers on chimps or impoppable, on some of the easier or intermediate or hell even advanced maps. I even did expert maps and got a flying fortress fortress and was just doing fine. This was in pop-up mode, and yeah, I mean, obviously you can get all these, and it's fine. It's passable. But I'm not looking for something that's okay, because the only thing that actually matters in this game is for balance and in chimps mode, in advanced map, and above. You can literally do anything on any modes easier than that. So if what I'm trying to get is to get each and every one of these tier 5 towers to be usable at a level that's of probably shoots chimps, actually, which is an intermediate map, but the hardest one, I'd say. Anything that shoots chimps and above. And if it can be usable in at least one of those maps, then I would consider it to be a worthwhile tier 5 tower. If it's not usable in any of those maps in chimps mode, then it is not a worthwhile tier 5 tower, with the exception of it being phenomenal in free play, like Temple, and what I'm trying to get Flying Fortress and Supermines to be, and other Super Monkey tier 5s. So with that in consideration, you have to realize how hard chimps mode actually is. You can't just say, well, this tower excels at this one thing and expect that to be good enough, not realizing that if you want to have specialized towers that excel at different things, you're not going to actually have the money. So you need a tower that specializes at really good Moab DPS, then you need a tower that specializes at really good group balloon DPS, then you need another tower that's really good at neutralizing super ceramics, so your group balloon DPS tower can take care of it. Then you need a tower that's exceptionally good against the BAD, which is insanely powerful, and on top of that, you need a tower that's exceptionally good against DDTs, and sometimes those towers will overlap. Usually the towers that people are saying are good at the one thing aren't actually good at any other thing. Like, they're just good at the one thing, and just being good at one of those categories is not enough, because you're just not going to have the money for all of it in chimps. In chimps mode, you get a total of about 175,000 cash. The effective amount is a bit less, considering you want it before round 98, which is one of the scariest rounds, and you only have 160,000 before then, and you can't afford all of that while putting in money for early game defense, which will not grow into late game defense, and just being able to focus on all those different categories with a different strong tower and supports. I didn't even mention the generic support, like the Moab glue, like the Moab push, or whatever the boomerang one is, the sabotage supply lines. I'm not even talking including that cost, and you're just not going to have all that money. So I'm hoping to at the very least drive down the price of these towers so you can afford and have these synergies, or so that one of the towers can cover more aspects, so it can cover more of those qualifications to beat the higher rounds in chimps mode with. So I hope that makes at least a little bit of sense. I'm hoping my intentions are clear, because as it is right now, there are 4 5th-tier towers that are worth using, and I guess 3 of them that are only worth using in advanced map and higher chimp mode, which are, again, the Comanche, the Permaspike, the Icicle Impale, and then the 4th one would be Temple for free play, of course. So that being considered, I mean, I don't know what to say. I really hope the other 5th-tier towers can become useful, just so if you want to actually beat a hard map in the game, you aren't forced into one of 2 strategies. I guess it's like not imperative, but if we're going for that goal, then I think these buffs should be made. If you just want bad towers to stay bad, then whatever, I guess leave it. If you don't give a shit about chimps mode at all, screw it. Have these towers stay bad. Enjoy your beginner map challenge or whatever. But I'm hoping for a little bit more strategy diversity in the higher maps, and for maybe even some higher maps to be possible. Quad chimps has still never been done yet. Muddy puddles, it's going to take some other types of buffs to make that possible, and I don't actually see that being possible. But it would be cool to see all the challenges in the game actually being possible. Now, I know that's also not a priority for some, and we could argue all day about that, and there's no real right or wrong answer for whether Muddy Puddles chimps should be possible or not, but I'm at least giving the perspective that, well, more stuff should be possible, and more strategy should definitely be possible. So with that being said, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all next time. Peace.